We spend so much of our lives asking questions about love. Does he love me? Does she miss me? Will this relationship last? But the truth is, all of these questions distract us from the one question that really matters, the one question we forget to ask ourselves. And until we do, we will keep repeating the same mistakes, falling into the same patterns, and confusing attachment with love. Today, I want to remind you of that question and why it changes everything. We rarely pause to question the source of our love, yet it is the most important question we can ask ourselves because it defines the quality of every connection we form. So often we confuse need with love, clinging to someone not because we are complete, not because we are drawn to them in a place of abundance, but because we feel incomplete on our own. We reach for love like a lifeline, hoping that their attention, their presence, their approval will fill the emptiness inside. And in doing so, we lose the distinction between longing and love, between attachment and affection, between desperation and devotion. When love is born from need, it becomes a fragile, conditional exchange. We give not freely, but with expectation, constantly, measuring whether what we receive in return validates our worth, as if their feelings are the scale by which we measure our value. And when they falter or withhold, our sense of self wavers, leaving us anxious, insecure, and perpetually searching for reassurance. But when love comes from wholeness, it is fundamentally different. It is not about what we can get or how we are seen, but about what we can give without fear, what we can share because we are overflowing, what we can create without losing ourselves in the process. Loving from wholeness allows us to stay grounded, to maintain our identity, to keep our boundaries clear, because the act of love is not an escape from our emptiness. It is an expression of our fullness, a reflection of our self-respect, a gift that is offered without the burden of neediness. It means entering a relationship not to complete yourself, not to fix your loneliness, not to demand affirmation from someone else, but to enhance your already complete existence with another person who also stands in their own wholeness. When you love from this place, you notice how much lighter your interactions become, how less you cling, how more you trust that your presence is enough and your absence will not diminish your value. You begin to understand that love does not have to be frantic, obsessive, or exhausting. It can be calm, steady, and nurturing because it is built on the foundation of inner fulfillment rather than the shifting sands of dependency. And the clarity that arises from asking this one question transforms the way you see yourself and others, because it teaches you to recognize the subtle signs of need-based attachment. The compulsive checking in, the constant seeking of approval, the fear of being alone, the tendency to compromise yourself just to keep someone close. Loving out of wholeness requires patience, self-awareness, and courage because it asks you to confront the parts of yourself that feel incomplete and to fill them before you attempt to share your life with someone else. And once you do, love becomes effortless, free, and powerful. No longer a transaction, no longer a negotiation of value, no longer a reflection of insecurity, but a natural expression of a heart that is already full, already enough, already whole. We often enter love with the belief that sacrificing parts of ourselves is the ultimate proof of devotion. That bending, reshaping, and silencing certain aspects of who we are will make someone stay, will make someone love us more, or will make the relationship work. But what we rarely stop to realize is that in doing so, we are erasing the very essence that makes us lovable in the first place. Losing yourself in love does not demonstrate strength or selflessness. It demonstrates fear. It demonstrates a lack of boundaries, and it slowly chips away at the foundation of your identity, leaving you hollow, exhausted, and disconnected from your own heart. True love does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to show up fully, authentically, vulnerably, without compromising the core of who you are. When you lose yourself for someone else, you begin to live in a shadow of your own existence, constantly measuring your words, your actions, your desires against their approval. And gradually, the freedom to express, to dream, to feel becomes a luxury you cannot afford. You may tell yourself that you are adapting, that love requires compromise, that relationships are about meeting halfway. But there is a subtle difference between compromise that nurtures the connection and compromise that diminishes your soul. Losing yourself is when your voice is muffled so that theirs is heard louder, when your ambitions are sidelined to accommodate their comfort, when your emotions are repressed to prevent conflict, and when your identity becomes dependent on how they define you. In this process, love transforms from a space of growth into a cage, from a sanctuary into a battlefield, from an exchange of joy into a pattern of survival. But when you honor yourself in love, when you refuse to dissolve your individuality to fit into someone else's expectations, a profound transformation occurs. You recognize that love thrives not in erasure, but in authenticity, not in surrender, but in mutual respect, not in adaptation at the cost of self, but in alignment with your deepest truths. Loving without losing yourself means showing up as a whole being, maintaining your passions, your opinions, your boundaries, and your independence while still offering your heart fully and generously. It requires courage to say no when something does not serve you, to express discomfort without fear of rejection, to prioritize your growth even when it challenges the rhythm of the relationship, and to stand firm in the knowledge that your worth is inherent, not conditional, upon how someone else experiences you. When you maintain this balance, love no longer becomes a battle of assimilation or approval. It becomes a dance of connection where both people can exist fully, bringing their complete selves to the union without losing the individuality that makes the bond vibrant, magnetic, and sustainable. Because the deepest truth we often forget is that love that asks you to lose yourself is not love. It is attachment, and attachment disguised as love will never allow the soul to breathe freely. So often in love, we mistake attention for acceptance, presence for validation, and affection for proof that we are enough. And in this confusion, we fall into the habit of giving ourselves not as a full, radiant expression of who we are, but as a carefully measured version designed to elicit approval. We tailor our words, our actions, our moods, even our desires to match what we think the other person wants, hoping that by doing so, we will be seen, valued, and loved. Yet in reality, this is not love. It is a subtle form of self-denial that convinces us that approval from another is more important than the truth of our own being. When we are seeking validation, our focus is constantly outward. We are preoccupied with how we are perceived, how our efforts are received, how our presence is evaluated. And in this outward gaze, we lose the intimacy with ourselves, the connection with our own essence, and the ability to give love freely and authentically. Sharing your essence, on the other hand, requires a depth of self-awareness and self-acceptance that allows you to offer your heart without compromise, to express your thoughts without editing them to please, to reveal you of vulnerabilities without fear of judgment, and to bring your desires, your passions, and your authenticity fully into the relationship. Because when love comes from a place of sharing rather than seeking, it is not transactional, it is not conditional, and it does not require constant reassurance. Seeking validation is exhausting because it depends on someone else's energy to feel complete, to feel worthy, to feel seen. And it often creates patterns of anxiety over compensation and subtle manipulation, because the underlying question is always, do they approve of me? Do they love me enough? Sharing your essence, however, is liberating because it acknowledges that your worth is inherent, that your value is not contingent upon external recognition, and that the act of giving love is an extension of your inner abundance, not a demand for reciprocation. When you love from your essence, you invite the other person into your world, not as a judge, but as a witness, not as a filler of emptiness, but as a companion on the journey of two complete beings connecting. And in this space, love becomes expansive, magnetic, and transformative because it is not colored by insecurity or fear. It is not restricted by need or expectation, and it flows naturally from the fullness of who you are. To ask yourself whether you are seeking validation or sharing your essence is to hold up a mirror to your motives, to confront the subtle ways in which you might be giving love with strings attached, and to recognize that the most authentic love you can offer is the one that originates from a place of integrity, self-respect, and unapologetic presence. Because when you share your essence, you are no longer performing for approval. You are no longer negotiating your value, and you are no longer dependent on external recognition to feel worthy of being loved. Love is often romanticized as a whirlwind of passion, excitement, and intensity. And while those feelings can exist, they are not the measure of a healthy, sustaining connection. Too often we confuse drama for depth, chaos for intimacy, and anxiety for desire, convincing ourselves that the emotional roller coaster we experience is proof that love is real. But the truth is that love at its core should not feel like a constant battle within your own heart and mind. One of the most important questions we forget to ask ourselves is whether this love brings a sense of peace or whether it keeps us trapped in unrelenting turmoil, because the answer reveals the foundation on which the relationship is built. Love that brings peace allows you to breathe, to show up fully, to express your emotions freely, and to exist authentically without fear of rejection or judgment. It does not demand that you walk on eggshells, constantly second-guess every word, every gesture, every thought, because when love is aligned with your well-being, the dominant feeling is calm, steadiness, and a quiet assurance that regardless of challenges, you are valued, heard, and seen. Turmoil, on the other hand, is a warning sign, a subtle, persistent alarm that the connection is not nurturing your soul. When you feel anxious, unsettled, or perpetually uncertain in a relationship, it often indicates that boundaries are blurred, expectations are unclear, or emotional needs are not being met. Turmoil can manifest as overthinking, every interaction fearing abandonment at every moment, or feeling drained after exchanges that should leave you energized. Because love that is rooted in fear or manipulation or insecurity will always create internal conflict, even if the outside world sees the relationship as perfect. Asking yourself whether you feel peace is not about measuring the absence of challenges. Every relationship will face tension, disagreements, or moments of frustration. It is about recognizing the dominant emotional tone, the atmosphere of the connection, and whether it allows for growth, rest, and ease of being. Peace in love feels like owning home to yourself even when you are with someone else. It feels like your heart can open without hesitation. Your mind can rest without questioning every nuance. And your energy is not sapped by constant worry, doubt, or self-censorship. Turmoil, by contrast, is exhausting, consuming, and eroding because it conditions you to seek validation, approval, or reassurance continuously, leaving little space for authenticity or joy. When you confront this question honestly, you begin to see patterns, to recognize when love is draining rather than uplifting, and to understand that love should not only ignite passion, but also provide sanctuary, because the presence of consistent peace does not diminish desire. It enhances it, making every connection more vibrant, more secure, and more aligned with the person you are becoming in the midst of love. It is easy to become so immersed in emotions, attachment, and the immediate sensations of connection that we forget to ask the deeper, more transformative question: does this love align with the person I am becoming? Too often we settle for relationships that satisfy temporary desires, momentary comfort, or social expectations without considering whether the union nurtures our growth, expands our consciousness, or serves the evolution of our soul. Aligning love with your higher self requires a level of awareness that goes beyond infatuation, beyond passion, beyond attachment. It demands that you look honestly at the trajectory of your life and the impact of this relationship on your personal development, your dreams, and your integrity. Relationships that are aligned with your higher self challenge you to step into your fullest potential, to confront patterns that no longer serve you, and to cultivate qualities such as patience, compassion, self-discipline, and courage. Because love that is not aligned will often distract, diminish, or derail the progress of your evolution, pulling you back into habits, fears, and insecurities that you have worked hard to transcend. When love resonates with your higher self, it becomes a force that amplifies your purpose rather than obstructing it. It inspires you to be more present, more authentic, more conscious in every interaction, and more committed to honoring not just the relationship but your individual journey. This alignment is not about perfection or avoiding challenges. It is about intentionality and resonance, about asking whether the person you are with reflects, respects, and encourages your growth, or whether they create friction that constantly pulls you away from your own values and aspirations. It is about feeling that even in the moments of disagreement, tension, or conflict, the relationship ultimately serves your evolution rather than eroding your sense of self. Love that is connected to your higher self elevates the mind, soothes the heart, and strengthens the spirit, because it asks you to show up fully, to act consciously, and to contribute in ways that honor both your individuality and the partnership you are cultivating. Conversely, love that is misaligned often manifests as patterns of control, stagnation, compromise of values, or repeated cycles of disappointment, because it is anchored in lower motivations such as fear, attachment, habit, or neediness, rather than intentional growth. To question alignment is not to doubt the intensity of emotions or the depth of connection. It is to measure the impact of love on your life, trajectory to assess whether it lifts you toward clarity, wisdom, and fulfillment, and to recognize that your heart deserves relationships that not only feel good in the moment, but also serve the evolution of your soul in the long term. Ultimately, love that is in harmony with your higher self resonates with truth, supports your journey, and becomes a sacred space where both individuals can thrive, evolve, and become more fully realized versions of themselves. When we step back and reflect on the journey of love, we realize that the most important questions are not about how someone else feels, how they act, or whether they meet our expectations. They are about us, about the depth of our awareness and the integrity with which we show up in our hearts, asking ourselves if we are loving from wholeness rather than need, if we are losing ourselves or maintaining our essence, if love expands us or diminishes us, if we are seeking validation or sharing our true selves, if we feel peace or constant turmoil, and ultimately if the love we are in align with our higher self is not a one-time exercise. It is a practice, a conscious way of navigating connection, intimacy, and desire. When we dare to face these questions honestly, we strip away the illusions, the fears, and the patterns that have kept us trapped in cycles of longing, compromise, and dissatisfaction. And we step into a love that is transformative, liberating, and authentic. It is a love that does not demand you erase yourself, does not thrive on chaos, does not measure worth by attention or approval, and does not tether your spirit to uncertainty. Instead, it becomes a space of clarity, growth, and alignment where both individuals can exist fully, bringing their wholeness, their authenticity, and their evolving selves to a connection that nourishes rather than depletes, that elevates rather than confines, and that reflects the highest version of who we are becoming. Because the question we often forget is not just a question, it is a compass guiding us toward love that is worthy of our heart, our time, and our soul.